Okay, let's just jump right in. We're going to break down this incredible story of a city on the absolute brink of destruction. Our source material lays out a tale of a desperate siege, a shocking betrayal from within, and a storm that, well, seemed to come out of nowhere. The source kicks things off with this incredibly powerful line from the Quran to paint a picture of just pure, absolute dread gripping the city of Medina. It's describing this moment where mothers are clutching their children and fear is just spreading like wildfire from house to house. And this is why. 10,000. A colossal coalition army had shown up right on their doorstep with, according to the source, one single, terrifying goal: to completely end Islam and its prophet. Now get this, facing that massive force were maybe, on a good day, 1,500 defenders. Some estimates say as few as 300. And their only defense? You're not going to believe it. A last-ditch, desperate plan, a simple trench dug in the sand. All right, so let's really set the stage for this thing. The source identifies it as the Battle of the Trench, or Ahzab, happening in the 5th year of the Islamic calendar. And this wasn't just any battle. It was a siege that was going to push everyone to their absolute limit. You know, the battle's name actually comes from this one central feature. Khandak is just the Arabic word for trench. And what's really interesting, according to the source, is that this whole unconventional idea came from a companion named Salman the Persian. And when you look at the numbers, it's just staggering. We're talking about a trench nearly 6 kilometers long. It wasn't random. It was specifically designed to stop the enemy's biggest advantage, their huge cavalry force. This was a massive undertaking, dug by hand by every defender they had, including the Prophet himself. So this 10,000-strong army, who were they exactly? Well, the source breaks them down into 3 main groups, and it calls them the Ahzab. That basically means the factions or the Confederates. And it was a pretty strange mix of groups, all with their own reasons for being there. The source material tells us you had Jewish tribes, portrayed as the ones who really got the ball rolling. You had the Ghatafan tribe, described as mercenaries who were basically promised a year's worth of dates. And then you had the Quraysh of Mecca, presented as the longtime arch-enemies. Now, the narrator points the finger directly at one group for starting this whole thing. The source claims that the Jewish tribe of Banu Nadir, who'd been exiled from Medina earlier, were the ones who put together this entire alliance. The whole thing is framed as an act of revenge. But here's where the story takes a really dark turn. The source argues that the biggest threat wasn't actually the 10,000 soldiers outside the trench. The real poison, it suggests, was festering inside the city walls. And the source introduces this Arabic term munafiq, which means hypocrite. The narrator points out this really fascinating origin for the word. It apparently comes from nafika, which is the secret backdoor escape tunnel that a desert rodent digs. The message is pretty clear. These are people who always have an escape plan when things get tough. So according to the source, these hypocrites had a pretty clear 3-step playbook to break everyone's spirit from the inside. First, spread fear by making the enemy seem invincible. Second, sow doubt by mocking any promises of victory. And third, make up excuses to get out of fighting on the front lines. And then things get even worse. This internal problem becomes a full-blown second front. The source describes the betrayal of the Banu Qurayza tribe, who allegedly tore up their treaty. And since their fortresses were inside the city's defenses, they essentially opened up a back door for the enemy. So you've got this massive army at the gates, and you've got betrayal from within. You can see why the source calls this the most severe, the most intense trial of faith these early Muslims had ever been through. Just think about the pressure they were under for a second. It's immense. They weren't just fighting a physical battle with swords and arrows anymore. They were caught in a brutal psychological war, fueled by doubt, fear, and betrayal. And this one quote, which the source attributes to a prominent hypocrite man, it just perfectly captures that feeling of despair. It's this bitter, sarcastic jab, mocking a prophecy that one day they'd conquer great empires, all while they're stuck in a ditch, starving and terrified. But according to the narrator, none of this was random. This extreme hardship was seen as a divine test. It was designed to basically shake everything up and reveal who truly believed and who was going to fold under pressure. In that moment, your faith either became solid as a rock or it just shattered. So the siege just drags on. For weeks, the source describes supplies running out, morale hitting rock bottom, and hope just fading. The defenders are pushed right to the edge. And just when it seems like all is lost, everything changes. Right at that moment of peak despair, the source is really clear on this point. The end didn't come because of some brilliant military move. The victory wasn't human at all. Instead, the resolution came in the form of divine intervention. And once again, the narrator turns to the Quran to describe what happened next. So we sent upon them a furious wind and soldiers you could not see. This signaled a complete and total shift in the battle. The source paints this incredible picture of the storm's effects. A freezing cold sandstorm just erupts in the middle of the night. It blows out all their fires, plunging the camp into darkness. It rips their tents out of the ground. It scatters all their food and supplies. The entire 10,000-man army is thrown into complete and utter chaos. And just like that, it was over. When the sun came up the next morning, the massive Confederate armies were gone, vanished. The siege that had paralyzed the city for weeks was broken, and Medina was saved. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this, according to the source? Well, the core message is presented as a kind of escalation. First, you have human effort, digging the trench, which was absolutely necessary. That led to the test of faith during the grueling siege. But the ultimate victory, that's presented as a divine promise being fulfilled, delivered by that miraculous storm. This event is remembered as a cornerstone of faith, right? A moment where the impossible became possible. And it really leaves you with a big question to think about. What is the role of a miracle in any story of survival against truly overwhelming odds?